There you go. All right. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate you sitting down with me to talk about your new movie you directed, High Heat. Just curious, this is like your first big project with a lot of big names. Were you nervous at all on set with, DDP and Olga and Don Johnson and those people around you?
I was terrified that I was going to catch a diamond cutter from DDP. Very thankfully, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nerve wracking working with people who you really admire. I'm a huge fan of Olga's. She's been in some of my favorite movies and has worked with like Terrence Malick and Martin McDonagh, who are just some of like my Mount Everests of direct or Mount Rushmores of directors. And then Don is like I've been such a fan of his from like going back all the way to my childhood. But any nerves were like honestly quite dissipated the second you meet these guys. They're so cool, so grounded. They're regular people. And what's so cool is like we're all there to do the same thing. I know like for Don Johnson and Olga especially, like this is a tiny little movie for them. It's a little blip on the radar, but every second they were there, it was just all about making a good movie and whatever they could do. It wasn't like, cool, we're done with this shot. Let me go to my trailer and screw off and call me when you need me. It was like they were there and they were part of the team, and it was super cool experience, but nerve wracking.
I can imagine. I mean, Don's always going to be Nash Bridges for me, but I always like seeing him in other things. Did you and James Pedersen, the writer, take any inspiration from any other movies? Like when I was watching, I got like an Assault on Precinct 13 kind of vibe with like the
I'm
gritty
so glad you
take.
said that. That was definitely one of them. Like, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a big one. Just in, I feel like that sort of had the same emotional core of the movie. Of it's about at its crux, it's about a couple with secrets, and those secrets are sort of holding them back from being able to have the relationship they want to have. So we definitely took a lot of inspiration from that, along with some of the action. Assault on Precinct 13 was a huge one. Like, when John Carpenter speaks, I listen. So that was what I tried to take away from that was just like, how can you make a bottled up single location movie feel really exciting and feel big? And I mean, I don't think anyone's ever done it better than he has. But yeah, like, and there's Tom Popo was another big one just in terms of food and really like leaning into sort of trying to understand these characters through food as well as through, some of the more expository scenes and action and that kind of thing. I grew up working in restaurants. My best friend's parents were restaurateurs. So like at age 13, I started washing dishes or like ride my bike from middle school to go do that. So it was a world that I spent like 7 or 8 years in and felt like I could do justice and really, like love the challenge of trying to make that a thing.
I definitely got the Assault on Precinct 13. I feel like you were saying the one shot location, it's outside, it's precinct, except it's outside and it's the restaurant this time, and these people are trying to get in.
Exactly.
Uh, I'm interested in the character Gary just because Jackie Long is in one of my favorite dumb movies of all time. He's in the comebacks, and like when I saw him in this, I was like, oh my god, it's Trotter from the comebacks in High Heat. Like, just was he always on your radar for this kind of role, or how did you find out about him?
I've known about Jackie since ATL. And it's weird. He somehow looks younger than he did in 2006. So I'm not quite sure what he's doing there, but I'd love to maybe, if someone wants to let me in on a secret, I'd be very happy. Yeah, I was just that I hadn't, when I signed on to direct, only Don and Olga were attached. So we cast everyone else. And I just like saw Jackie. It wasn't honestly what I was thinking about for that character originally, but, just going back and watching some of his previous work, it's like he just has he's just so funny. I just want to laugh every single time he's on screen. And I felt like that was I felt like some of the secondary characters were a way to give this movie a little bit more of a comedic tone. Sort of like sort of like Vince Vaughn and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's like that really sort of gives the movie a comedic bent that makes it lighter and more fun. So we tried to incorporate that. I thought, Jackie was like his first day was our first day of shooting. And like the first thing we shot was that deep fryer interrogation scene where Olden is holding his hand in the hot oil. And we're walking to set to start rehearsal. He goes, yo, Zach, I got some ideas. I'm like, all right, you want to talk about him? He goes, no, just wait. And so we start rehearsing and he doesn't say a single word that's on the page. Like he doesn't read one of the lines. He had an entirely new script. And I knew Olga for one day at this point. And so I didn't know if she was going to be down to clown and, improv and just like go crazy. So I was like, that was probably the most anxious I was the entire time of the shoot. And Olga did not miss a beat. I mean, she just like hung in there with Jackie and like they were one upping each other. And it set a really nice tone for the rest of the movie, because it was like, okay, we got a cast that can pull this off. We got a cast that can do, we can take what's on the page and even grow it and make it bigger and better and funnier and more dramatic. And so that kind of became like my template for how I tried to work throughout the whole film.
I think one of the scenes that I laughed at the most is the twins doing the shining bit. Like when Chris wrote that, or when James wrote it and you were directing it, was that in the script, or did you guys just kind of make it up on the spot? Because it felt kind of improv at that
It
point.
was, yeah, we made it up on the spot. It wasn't in the script. We wanted to figure out a cool way for Jackie's character Gary to get captured, and I thought the minivan was a cool way to do that. But we needed, like, okay, well, how do we sort of box him in? And Gary is like gets the butt end of a lot of abuse in this movie. Poor Gary. And we just thought that, like, man, we have these incredibly hysterical, talented, identical twins, the D'Ambrosio sisters, and they were just a hoot to work with. Like, I would give them notes between takes, and they would answer in perfect unison, like word for like long, like, okay, Zach, that sounds great, we'll do it, but two voices, and it's like it's creepy. I love those girls, but man, it was scary. So we just started to kind of lean into it more, and I feel like as we went further along, we just kept finding ways to incorporate the characters that were really giving us a ton into the movie more and more. And so that was just another example of that.
I know Don and Olga have a big background in like action movies, but I was surprised with Chris and Caitlin Doubleday that they have more comedic backgrounds. Like, I'm used to Caitlin from Waiting and Accepted, and Chris from
love that movie.
Silicon Valley. And I was talking to him the other day. I was like, Russ Hannon's like one of my favorite characters of all time. But to see you with like a sniper rifle and a gun, like, I didn't feel like you could do that, but now I believe that you can. Like, did you always have him in mind for the role of Tom?
Yeah, I'm a huge Chris Diamantopoulos fan. I think, like, I don't know. I'm a huge Caitlin Doubleday fan too, by the way. Both of those guys sort of have the same superpower of just they're able to do anything and they're able to be amazing at it. I mean, like, not very many actors have played like Russ Hanneman, Mork, a Three Stooge, and then, like, sort of cuckolded henpecked husband in our, yeah. So it was so cool just seeing those guys. And actually, when I talked to Chris, I got on the phone with him when we were casting him, and he said, "You know what drew me to this so much? I've never played this character before, and that's what I'm always looking for, is something new." And it's like, if you look at his full body of work, which is fairly astounding, it's true. Like, he really, every time you think like, oh, he's the guy who plays the douchey tech bro. It's like, no, he didn't. He did that once, and he'll never do it again. And so it was so cool working with them. That's probably where we did the most improv. Those guys are just so sharp and so funny. So it was like, when they're being that generous with their talent, and they're like, hey, what if we try this? When they say that to you, it's like, you'd be crazy not to take what they're proposing and, find ways to work it in. And I think that those characters ended up being some of my favorite stuff in the movie, just because it felt so like their chemistry was so unbelievable, and their comedy together was so funny and pointed. And like, I really believe that, like, Caitlin and Chris go home together, and she just bosses him around all the time. So yeah, it was total pleasure with them.
Yeah, when I talked to Chris, he spoke very highly of you and James. He's like, they're young guys, but they're definitely going places. Just last question for you, Zach, is what's the future hold for you? More directing, more writing? Do you have anything else on the horizon coming up?
Yeah, I'm just finished this, and I've been writing a disaster comedy actually with Ivan Martin. We're co-writing it together, who played Nick in this movie. So he and I just got on like super, super well. Just had the same sensibilities. We would, all of our shoots were like from 6 p.m. call time, 6 a.m. wrap. So we were like, sitting in parking garages at 4 a.m. talking about Criterion movies that we love. And it just kind of turned out that we both have a lot of the same sort of cinematic references, and we stayed in touch. And so, yeah, we're writing like a super, super fun disaster comedy. I don't want to talk about it too much, but we're going to try to get it. We're going to try to make it next year. It's pretty timely. So yeah, I think, like, definitely want to do more in action, and definitely want to, I try to bring some comedy to everything I do. It's just, I think the world is a lot more fun when you can laugh at it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, when I saw it was 84 minutes long, I was a little nervous because, those movies kind of get like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting here. But no, I really liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. So I
Oh, thanks.
appreciate you sitting down to talk with me today about it, Zach.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah. Appreciate it, James.
Yep.